Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for showing up and listening to part two of the Bling book. And as I said, I'm going to be adding commentary to this reading, okay? Sit back, relax, put your feet up, get you some chilled beverage or water. And let's jump into chapter 7 of Bling book by Erica Kennedy. And the title of chapter 7 is Rebel Without a Pause. After completing a marathon round of phone interviews in the conference room, Ridiculous stopped in to see his pal Daryl. As he pushed a pile of rap and car magazines to the floor so he could sit in the long office chair that was wedged between Daryl's desk and the wall, Daryl said, "Yo, did you see your review in XXL? It's here." Dickie's impressively picked out afro flat back as he dove into the magazine pile. Daryl's phone rang and he answered it. "What's poppin'?" Wrong move. It was Imani, Lamont's kiss-ass assistant. Her name meant faithful in Swahili, but the only person she was unfailingly faithful to was Lamont. "Didn't I tell you not to answer the phone like that?" she scolded. "What you want? If Lamont hears you answer the phone that way, it's going to be your ass." It was a point of pride for Daryl that he could often get under her skin enough to elicit some explicitive. He wished. She said effing ass. Funny how she never said a curse word within earshot of Lamont. "When you answer the phone, say Daryl McHenry," she instructed. "That's all. Not what dat. Not what's good. You sound like a damn fool." There was nothing Daryl would have loved more than to give Miss Manners a swift kick in the ass. It was bad enough that he had to entertain Dickie in his windowless hole that used to be a effing storage closet. He didn't want to sound all corporate and ish. He and Richard Dickie Garnett had grown up together in South Carolina. Dickie, now 25, was 2 years older than Daryl, but he had been left back twice, so they wound up in the same grade in school. No academic role model, that Dickie, but he was hands down the coolest and funniest cat south of the Mason-Dixon line. He had been the star of their high school, always drawing a crowd by spitting clever verses, which Daryl fed him beforehand to snap on other guys or to compliment the pretty girls. Now he was a star for real, with platinum sales, endorsement deals, more hot chicks than he could juggle. A plush condo in Fort Lee, New Jersey, and the brand new limited edition Sean John model of the Lincoln Navigator, which included a Jacob the Jeweler clock in the dashboard. Sean John model. You see, this man had a Lincoln. He had a model. Okay, let's go on. Daryl watched Dickie intently reading his album review, no more than a paragraph or two, but it still might take Dickie a while to get through. His reading comprehension wasn't the best, but he was undeniably good looking, well built with a silky goatee, hooded bedroom eyes, and charisma to spare. So Dickie didn't spend much time worrying about his borderline literacy. If Daryl were to disturb him right now, Dickie be the first to snap on himself. "Damn, nigga, chill. Now you know I can't read." After being summoned to New York by Dickie 3 years ago, Daryl had fallen in line and stayed humble. He hustled behind Dickie on the road, secured women for the crew, and taken the fall when a bag of weed was discovered on their tour. Bussed by border cops as they crossed over into Canada. Winning over Lamont was harder. For his first 6 months on the scene, Daryl had to address him as Mr. Jackson, while Dickie called him Monty or my nigga. But he had made it to the next level and catering to Mr. Fat Man's every whim. including cleaning his sneakers with a toothbrush for $5 a pair, had paid off. Daryl had finally gotten his shot at producing, and he received official writing credit on the Straight Clownin'. After having ghostwritten some of Dickie's first album and even more of the second, Daryl's goal was to be bigger than P. Diddy. But like the legions of industry up-and-comers who were envious of the unstoppable Diddy mojo, all he did was badmouth the hardest working brother in the biz. Okay, so she mentioned Diddy. Daryl eyed the enormous diamond jester crown hanging from a platinum chain around Dickie's neck. That's what he needed. Some effing ice. A necklace, a watch, a pair of 3-carat stud earrings, maybe, or damn, not even a pair, just one. Diamonds of any sort. But he had to send money down to his parents every month to take care of his 4 younger siblings, so there wasn't much left over for non-essentials. He was embarrassed to be ice deprived around Dickie, but he played it off like he didn't care. Last year, after Dickie got his Reebok dough, he offered to buy Daryl a sick watch that cost 2 times Daryl's salary at his A&R job. Nah, homie, you know I like to keep it low-key, Daryl had said, turning it down even though he wanted it, and how. He told himself he'd get that and more on his own one day very soon. I said, what you want? Daryl repeated into the phone slowly and sharply. I need to speak with you, Imani said. We speaking right now. No, I need you to look at something. Please come to my office. Imani had a desk all the way on the other side of the floor, right outside Lamont's stately office. Their spacious executive suite was behind glass doors. Daryl wanted to tell her that just because she wore dreads and got invited to every industry party didn't make her cool. She only got into those parties because everyone knew getting in good with Imani meant they go to the top of Lamont's callback list. She didn't even have a man to bring as her +1. As far as Daryl was concerned, she was just a 27-year-old college dropout who worked her way up from receptionist to executive assistant by puckering up to Lamont's fat ass. You know, Imani, you should have been a school principal, Daryl said to ruffle her feathers. You would have been good at that. And you missed your calling too, Daryl, she retorted crisply. You should have been one of Satan's elves. Stuck up itch. I'm in a meeting. I'm leaving in 5, Daryl said, and picked up another line that was flashing before she could utter another word. Talk to me, he answered expensively. It was Mecca, the cutie he met at Ridiculous album release party and almost slept with a few nights later after they had shared a cheap Chinese dinner in the flick. She was only 18 but truly talented between the sheets, and she knew how to cornrow. She'd hook him up on all fronts. He got Dickie's attention and put her on speaker. What's up, girl? He said in an intimate whisper. When you gonna let me get into some of that good stuff again? Am I on speakerphone? Ain't nobody in here but me. I gotta run out to an important meeting, he said, winking at Dickie, hoping to impress her and his homeboy simultaneously. I'm trying to get my stuff together. So you still want me to braid your hair later? Looking at Daryl's messy cornrows, Dickie bugged his eyes out and nodded his head in an affirmative. For sure, Daryl said, really hemming it in. My issue's getting raggedy. Swing by the office around 7 and we can get some grub first. Definitely. If I come up there, maybe I can get that new ridiculous CD. Dickie smiling wide enough that his 1 diamond platinum tooth showed. Childishly pumped his crotch to the air while Daryl thought, groupie? The first thing she said to him when she learned he worked at Triple Large was, can you get me into a video? Sure enough, girlfriend, but F me first. As a no-name producer and no title-having assistant who was often strapped for cash, he had to work a lot harder than Dickie to pull chicks. Hell, Dickie didn't have to work for it at all. He had to beat these Starstruck itches off him day and night. Daryl stayed in close proximity so he could help himself to the overflow. You know why I want you to braid my hair, Daryl said, flashing Dickie a smile that said, peep the game, player. Because I do neat parts? No, because Imani barged in to find the two guys leaning mischievously over the phone just as the words, I love to be between your legs, slipped from Daryl's lips. Daryl! Imani exclaimed. Dickie couldn't hold it in any longer and howled with laughter. Daryl! The humiliated girl on the other end of the line wailed. Daryl quickly grabbed the receiver, bobbing it like a hot potato, but when he got it to his ear, all he heard was a dial tone. Dickie doubled over, howling even louder. In a meeting, huh? Imani rolled her eyes and gave Dickie a friendly peck on the cheek. These, she said, fanning a sheaf of papers in Daryl's face, are studio bills that are going way over budget. You better look at these and come up with some new answers, boy. Those supposed to come to me, Daryl responded angrily. Yes, they are, and they did, but you have submitted them for payment. She nodded toward a stack of mail on the floor behind Daryl's desk. You don't even open half your mail. The studio called me about it, and I had the past due invoices faxed over. I'll take care of it. You better. Dickie's head moved back and forth like he was at a tennis match. He enjoyed having a box seat for these frequent battles. Imani served up a lot of aces. Does Witchy know about this? Daryl asked. Not yet. Lamont? No, she warned. But if you don't take care of it in a timely manner, he will. Imani turned to leave. She had to get to her screenwriting class in NYU. Lamont was paying for it. 2 years ago, she'd gone into his office and told him she was thinking of going back to school full time. She timed her announcement for the precise moment when he was fully engrossed in reading the cover story Black Enterprise had done on him called Triple Large and in Charge. He was pissed because he'd underestimated his network. When she told him she might have to quit, he kept reading and said, go at night, I'll pay. You're not quitting. It had worked exactly as she planned, and now she was on the second draft of her first screenplay. Though she was in a hurry, she remembered something and spun around. What day is Mimi coming back? Friday, I think. It had taken Daryl 2 days to dig up Mimi's home number. He lost another day being in jail, and then he called and left a message with some guy who answered. Mimi hadn't returned his call. Give me the number, I'll call her. Imani said officiously, we need to make her plane reservations. I'm handling it. Are you or aren't you? Imani said, picking a piece of lint off her black wool pencil skirt. You told Lamont she was coming back on Thursday. Now you say it's Friday. You think? All of a sudden, Dickie seemed to get real interested in an article. Daryl knew why. The name Daryl McHenry meant nothing around here. He had no clout, none. He knew it. Dickie knew it, but they didn't talk about it. Friday, Daryl declared firmly. I'll call the travel agency and make the reservations. Again, Imani returned to leave. Get to stepping, itch, Daryl silently commanded. And, she said, halting to toss off one last directive, make sure you tidy up the apartment in preparation for her arrival, including the bathroom. Spotless, you hear me? It killed Daryl for his boy to hear that. Dickie was a star, and Daryl was Lamont's slave. He was forced to take a stand, but before he could come up with a snap, Imani had swanned away. Whatever, he shouted weakly, and then tried to get Mecca back on the line. Okay, that was the end of chapter 7. I wonder how long is Daryl gonna keep up the shenanigans by lying and saying that she Mimi is coming back in town when he knows that's not true. Okay. Yeah, I want to see how this is going to go. I hope that she ends up just, making the decision to be a solo artist. I wonder if that's going to happen. All right, y'all, let's go to chapter 8. Sky's the limit. For the last time, we are not moving to Atlanta, Toya said, sitting on the couch in the lounge of Wild Side Studios. They just finished singing background on yet another demo. After all the free background work they done, Kenny was finally getting them paid. A pittance. They never even heard back after the Triple Large audition. Toya knew out of all of them, Mimi would be the most hurt, but she hadn't even mentioned it. Ever since they come back from New York a week ago, Atlanta was all Mimi talked about. Used to be that Mimi was the quiet one. The first time they performed at a talent show, she come down with such severe case of stage fright that they almost had to pull out at the last minute. But Toya has seen her toughen up a lot over the years. Being in the group had a lot to do with it. Mimi had a beautiful voice, but it took hearing applause from other people for her to appreciate it. And then after they gained a rep, all those catty girls from school who had once hated on her were out in the audience applauding too. Mimi had always had a strong backbone though. With that flaky mother of hers, she had no choice. It had just taken a while for it to show itself. Now look at her. She was all ready to pack up and move to Atlanta, a place where they didn't know a soul. Toya wasn't going anywhere. Her entire family was in Toledo, and she wasn't about to move to Atlanta to scrape and struggle, chasing some impossible dream. And after what Keisha had told her that afternoon, Keisha wasn't going anywhere either. Why are you so desperate to move to Atlanta all of a sudden anyway? Toya asked. Toledo does not breed stars, Mimi said. Keisha was slumped down at the end of the couch, and Toya shot her a look as she said, yeah, but Keisha can breed here. Mimi looked quizzically at Toya. Then she turned and caught Keisha making a face at Toya behind her back. What does that mean? Keisha smiled nervously. Well, I have some good news. No, Mimi thought. Please do not say what I know you're about to say. I'm not getting fat, Keisha said. I'm pregnant. Mimi looked at Toya as if she needed confirmation. Toya kept her eyes directed forward at the television and mumbled, don't look at me. Mimi turned back to Keisha. But you're not going to have it. Mimi, Toya admonished in Keisha's defense. Hell yes, Keisha said, terribly hurt. She rubbed her belly. I'm keeping my baby. You better congratulate her, Toya said, and stop being so selfish. Selfish, Mimi wanted to say. I turned down a solo deal to stick with the group, and now Keisha wants to have a baby with a drug dealer who already has 2 other kids and ruining everything. Keisha, you have no job. Your boyfriend is a drug dealer, Mimi said. He's getting out of that. Keisha snapped back reflectively. Anyway, we're getting married. Toya hadn't heard that part of the news. You are? Yeah, we're going to shop for a ring tomorrow. Mimi couldn't believe it. At that moment, she realized she'd been a complete fool. She was always thinking about everyone else. Toya, Keisha, her mother. It was time to start thinking about herself. Well, great, Mimi said. I have some good news, too. The girls looked at her expectantly. I'm signing a solo deal with Triple Large. Stop lying, Keisha said. I am, Mimi confirmed, a bit haughtily. Since when? Toya demanded, wondering if Keisha's news had sent Mimi off the deep end. Was she making this up? Since Lamont Jackson offered me one, Mimi said, thinking that Lamont may have been right. They probably would have dumped her if either of them had been offered the solo deal. Apparently, it was every woman for herself. That's where I went that day in New York. There was no guide. Daryl took me to Lamont's apartment, this huge penthouse, and he's dying to sign me to a deal, a solo deal. And you're going to dump us like that? Keisha said angrily. No, Mimi said, I turned them down for you. But since you obviously don't care about doing this, you go on and have your baby because I'm taking the offer. You can't, Keisha wailed. Toya was surprised by the edge in Mimi's voice. She was acting like Keisha had done this purposely to hurt her. But what was Keisha complaining about? Keisha, you're pregnant, Toya reminded her. But I never said I was quitting the group. Keisha insisted. I can have my baby, and 7 months from now, everything is back to normal. I can't wait 7 months, Mimi said, arms folded. Imani, Lamont's assistant, had called Mimi at home that morning. Imani had been shocked when Mimi told her that she wasn't coming back to New York. Daryl hadn't said anything. Mimi decided that first thing tomorrow she was going to call her back. God, what if they wanted to take back the offer? What if they thought she was some kind of temperamental diva? Look, Toya said before Keisha jumped up to fight. Pregnant or not, she would get into it with anyone, even Mimi. I'm quitting the group, okay? So it's all settled. Mimi, go do your thing. Mimi's anger drained away in an instant. You mean that? Yes, I've been thinking about quitting for a while. The only reason I went through with the audition is because I knew it meant so much to you two. Why didn't you say something, Mimi asked. Same reason you didn't say anything to us about them offering you a deal. Because I knew you'd be upset. Toya took Mimi's hand. I went to performing arts because I like to dance. And it was better than going to the horrible school in my district. And singing in our group was fun. But it was always more like a hobby to me. But for you, Mimi is your dream. Lamont obviously thinks you have what it takes to make it come true. And you do. I always knew that. So I say go for it. Mimi hugged Toya and then turned to Keisha, hoping for her approval too. After years of getting into scrapes, Keisha had learned one thing: to recognize when she couldn't win. After a long silence, during which she rubbed her belly, she grudgingly said, "Go on, girl. Just don't forget about your old friends." Did I tell you about someone ensconced in a prime booth at Tartan? Lamont had been haranguing Travis Peters for 20 minutes. Which someone? Travis asked, holding his notepad but scanning a room for other people of interest. My Asian rapper, Lamont said. That's his name. What is his name? They had a brief who's on first type go around until Lamont grabbed the notepad, wrote someone, and underlined it. He's real introspective, a great storyteller. He's going to be the Chinese Eminem, album in stores in April. Great, Trevor says, and walked away. Sometimes Lamont wondered why he needed publicity maven Ali C on his payroll. He was his own best publicist, but he couldn't spin stories every minute of the day. He was a bed-stuy nigga made good, and Ali C was the indefatigable Jap from Long Island, as she would say. But she could get real gangster when it came to securing pub for her clients. So, in that respect, they were cut from the same cloth. Lamont watched Travis make his way over to Don Gambino, sitting with his posse, the firing squad. Gambino was guzzling champagne straight from the bottle. A custom-made pair of diamond-encrusted handcuffs dangled from the platinum chain around his thick neck. Son of a bitch, probably on steroids, Lamont thought nastily. Lamont worked out to stay in shape. Nothing wrong with that. Gambino looked like he was training for an Ironman competition, and no matter the weather, he wore tank tops or jerseys that showed off his pecs, which Lamont thought was rather gay. Lamont had noticed that since Gambino had taken to appearing in all his artist videos, his once hairy chest had become totally smooth. Whatever he did to achieve that effect, did he shave it, wax it, was completely gay. The latest word on the street was that Gambino had liposuction on his stomach and had a weekly high colonic. They stuck a tube up your butt to clean you out because it gave his abs a more defined look. If true, Lamont figured the man was one step away from a sex change operation. But Lamont had to admit that Gambino had done very well with Super Fat E, the star rapper on his label, Hits Inc. That's why Lamont was willing to shell out big bucks to get Fat E for the good-looking soundtrack, and why he wanted Mimi to work with him. Now all he had to do was get Mimi back here so she could work. Imani had informed him that there was a slight glitch in the program, but he would handle that soon. Travis was scribbling a lot. What did Gambino have to say that was so press-worthy? Lamont called him by his real name, Donald. His surname was Jones. Gambino was a nickname he'd given himself. These hip-hop new jacks, Lamont thought scornfully, gangsters in their own minds. They all think they're starring in a movie called Hoodfellas. With his albino-esque fair skin, face full of freckles, and nappy red hair worn in intricate zigzagging cornrows that looked like an alien crop circle, Don Gambino resembled a ghetto opie more than a member of a Gambino crime family. All flash and no substance. Lamont had decided long ago. That was the problem with all the dogs that were barking at his heels. Gambino didn't know anything about the streets. He was straight up middle class, a graduate at St. Albans Prep in Queens. He wouldn't have survived a day in the Marcy projects as Lamont had. Lamont had done it right, attending City College and studying business administration while promoting parties on the side. He interned at a non-defunct hip-hop label during college. Then after graduation, had worked as the label's promotion man for a year before he started managing one of their groups, Ghetto Soldiers. He's seen all sides of the business and along the way learned how to talk the talk with all the white boys. He worked his way up and earned his success. Nothing had ever been handed to him. Now, after he blazed a trail as one of the early hip-hoppreneurs, Gambino and those of his ilk wanted to run roughshod over it and acquire a fistful of bills overnight without a solid business plan or one decent suit hanging in their closets. And they were succeeding. What other industry made you feel old at 38? For most men, that was an age when their career were hitting their strides, but Puff had made the Forbes magazine richest 40 under 40, with a net worth of close to $300 million by age 30. When Lamont had seen that, he'd taken the magazine into the bathroom in his office, locked the door, and let out a primal scream. Gambino, with the revenues of his clothing company, Treads, growing every year, had a personal net worth of over $75 million. He was 28. Lamont had totally missed out on the clothing thing. The garment industry was a totally different ball game, and he hadn't had any interest in learning it. But now he saw that his single-minded focus may have been a mistake that left him choking on the glitter dust of these other Negroes. Even if he sold triple large one day for many millions, he still probably wouldn't make the Forbes list. Everything was about youth culture these days. The entertainment industry wasn't catering just to teenagers anymore. Last year, Lamont had gone to a conference called Targeting Tweens with Vern DeLuca, the advertising guru. He and Lamont were considering forming a company called Triple Large Advertising to market to the urban consumer. Lamont had thought the seminar was called Targeting Teens, and I wonder why Vern even wanted to go, because wasn't that what they both did all day long? But within the first few minutes, he got a crash course on this new demographic. They're 10 going on 16, not kids, not teens. They're tweens. The keynote speaker said, looking like he wanted to bust out some pom-poms. Tweens have become one of the nation's most significant consumer groups. Huge amounts of music, television, movies, games, electronics, fashion, and food are being marketed in their direction. And they're buying. Spending by U.S. tweens will reach nearly $41 billion in 2005. Lamont left thinking, great. Now I have to give an S about what a 10-year-old thinks. The young ballers like Gambino and Damon Dash, the head of Rockefeller Record Clothing Vodka Film Empire, always made a show of paying Lamont conspicuous respect. But somehow it felt more like disrespect to him. Meanwhile, they all bowed at the altar of Russell Simmons. They acted like the godfather of hip-hop had invented the whole ish. Russell was a shrewd businessman, and he had retreated from the music scene years ago after selling his share of Def Jam Records for $100 million. Now he devoted more attention to his clothing line, Fat Form, and every time Lamont ran into him, Russ was either going to or coming from a yoga class. Talk about queer. Lamont thought Russell's semi-retirement was a perfect opportunity to step into the Godfather's shell shoes and lord over the industry, but the people whose opinions counted had been slow to come around. Lamont's eyes bore down on Gambino in his Allen Iverson jersey. It didn't matter if you were from Philadelphia or not. All the hip-hop kids rocked number 3 Sixers jersey because Iverson got down like them. AI's cornrows and the 300,000 worth of ice glittering around his neck on his wrist, and both lobes perfectly complemented his FU attitude. Gambino was a hip-hop kid as far as Lamont was concerned. He's a child and amateur. Lamont reassured himself, despite the fact that the Don was the multimillionaire CEO of his own hip-hop conglomerate. Lamont tried to clear his mind. He knew he conducted these internal dialogues whenever he experienced a flash of self-doubt. The flash had begun to come so frequently and unexpectedly that he felt like he was suffering from some form of early onset male menopause. He now noticed Daryl was also wearing an Iverson jersey that had been concealed under his jacket earlier. Lamont looked over the girl who Daryl was crowding in the corner and decided she had too much flab hanging over the waist of her jeans. She was semi. He let Daryl have her. Ooh. Enjoy yourself tonight, player, Lamont thought, because come tomorrow, it's ass-kicking time. Lamont unconsciously rubbed his gut under his brown cashmere sweater. He was beginning to hate those number 3 jerseys mocking him at every turn. He felt like Michael Jordan guarding Iverson. Once MVP, but now fearing one good crossover dribble would have everyone wondering why he couldn't just relinquish his throne gracefully and go play a round of golf. Gambino caught Lamont's eyes and raised his bottle of Chris in salute. Lamont raised his bottle of spring water in return, but he didn't budge. There was an awkward moment until Gambino squeezed out of his booth, yanked the brim of his sideways turned Phillies cap, and headed in Lamont's direction. That's right, son, Lamont thought. Kiss my ring. Okay, that was the end of chapter 8. So what I liked about this chapter is they finally came out and let us know what Mimi planned to do. So all it took was for her friends to show that they were going on living their lives without, thinking too much about the music group. So when she saw that, Keisha was impregnated and Toya, really wasn't really into the singing like that, she said, okay, you know what? She felt like she was foolish for putting off what was offered to her to keep the group together. Well, she was being loyal to them and they weren't being loyal to her. Now, I don't really think they were being like malicious or messy. I think that they weren't into singing as much as she was. And since nothing was really happening and all they were doing was singing backgrounds on demos and such, and nothing was popping, it was like, okay, well, if nothing's going to jump out for us, I just might as well just go ahead and live my life. And that's what they did. So it's good to know that they weren't being haters. I appreciate that much. So, okay, let's jump into chapter 9. Takeover. The sweaty, middle-aged white man threw his basket full of items onto the conveyor belt. Looking at her name tag, he said, "That your real name?" "Mimi," she said cheerily, beginning to scan his items. "That's me." For the first time in 3 years, she didn't mind idle chatter from male customers. Soon she'd be out of here. She had called Imani first thing this morning and was told that both Imani and Daryl were out of the office, but they would call her back tomorrow. When she gone to work, she imagined a conversation she soon had with Herbie, Save Mart manager, the first class Dick. She had 2 words for him: "See ya." But she decided it was better to speak to Imani or Daryl first before doing anything rash. It wasn't official yet. Sometimes I see people wearing name tags and I think, that girl doesn't look like a Diane or a Gwen. Like they picked up any tag. The man rambled on, though she wasn't paying him much attention. She couldn't stop daydreaming about being solo. Maybe she could record some of her own songs instead of the mediocre material that Kenny had made them record for the demo. You ever feel like doing that? Doing what? She asked. Pretending to be someone else. All the time, she said, thinking those days are over. She was going to be a signed recording artist, a solo artist. Goodbye, Toledo. Goodbye, Save Mart. And goodbye, Jerry. The man leaned closer and whispered, "You know, I like the sisters. And goodbye to jackasses like you," she thought gleefully. "Maybe I'll see you again sometime," the sweaty, sister-loving irritant said as he handed her 20. She broke into a wide smile and replied, "Not around here, you won't." She got out of work early by faking an upset stomach and cruised around the mall. Everything looked different. When she saw couples holding hands, she didn't feel the slightest twinge of jealousy. She was going to have songs on the radio and videos on MTV, and Jamal was going to be sorry for what he'd done to her. And New York was a big city. She'd meet somebody better than Jamal in no time. Someone who was going to treat her right and adore her. She went into a couple of stores, and instead of agonizing about making purchases like she usually did, she treated herself. 2 pairs of shoes at 9 West and 3 pairs of jeans at Gap. She was worth it. Then, instead of taking a bus home, she called a cab. Usually she did that only if she was working late at night. And even then, only if she couldn't get a ride from someone at the store. She wondered what her mother would say. She hadn't told her about it because Angela got hysterical about everything, good or bad. And if Jerry had gotten wind of it, he would have tied her up and taken her back to New York himself and tried to collect a finder's fee. She decided she'd wait, telling once she knew for sure. That was her plan. But when the cab pulled up to her house, she realized something was definitely up. The limo parked out front tipped her off. She opened the front door and laid eyes on the oddest ensemble of people she'd ever seen. Imani was sitting at the kitchen table with Angela, who was holding a mug of coffee in an unsteady hand. Daryl was perched on the kitchen counter, tapping like mad on his two-way. The guy they called Witchy, who had been in the audition, was reclining in the armchair, holding the TV remote control and talking on his cell. At one end of the sofa was Jerry, who, for once, had the decency to be wearing jeans and a shirt with sleeves instead of his usually grubby boxers and wife beater. Lamont was huddled all the way at the other end as if Jerry were covered in anthrax. She walked in and all 6 people in a cramped space looked up at her. "Nice place you've got here," Lamont said in greeting. Mimi cringed, having a blinding flashback of Lamont's luxurious digs. All the things she had stopped noticing about their ramshackle house came into sharp focus. The clanging radiator, the grease spot on the kitchen wall, the threadbare carpet under Lamont's polished black shoes. "Mimi, why didn't you tell us?" Angela wailed. "They want you to sign a record deal. I was informed," Lamont said, "that you're having some second thoughts." Lamont glanced crossly at Daryl, who seemed to be trying to hide behind the kitchen wall. Daryl passed the buck and slapped Imani with a murderous glare. That nosy itch had to call Mimi when he told her not to. And of course, she then gone and snitched to Lamont. "But we told him you're going to take it," Jerry chimed in. Who the hell is Jerry? "Who are you to tell them anything?" Mimi snapped. She could already see his pupils turning into dollar signs. Ka-ching! Angela was sitting silently at the kitchen table, afraid to make a peep in front of these people. When they rung her doorbell this afternoon, she hadn't known what was going on, but she tried to be hospitable. Once they explained the purpose of their visit, they tried to contact Mimi at work, but she had already left and no one knew where she had gone. Lamont sat down, apparently to wait for Mimi's return, though he hadn't asked if he could stay. Then everybody else settled in because he had. Lamont didn't look like Angela imagined a rap person would. The only hip-hop person she really could identify was Puff Daddy. If the name P. Diddy had come up, she would have thought that was someone or something entirely different. And when she'd seen him on TV, he usually wore lots of gaudy jewelry and a shifty expression. Lamont was wearing a fancy navy pinstripe suit with a crisp white shirt open at the neck and some beautiful jewelry, one diamond earring and a lovely pinky ring. He seemed very nice, and his executive assistant was such a pleasant girl. Jerry had come home a while ago and had been briefed. He confidently declared that this was a good deal Lamont was offering and Mimi should take it. Angela had no opinion of her own, but if Jerry said it was good, it must be. He'd been a used car salesman for more than 10 years. He knew from deals. "We brought the contracts," Lamont said to Mimi. Imani rushed over and put them on a coffee table. "You can read it all in black and white right here," Lamont reassured her. "We already showed them to your folks." "Jerry is not my folks," Mimi said as she flipped through the papers. It was all in legal language that she couldn't decipher, and there must have been over 100 pages. Lamont was getting antsy but tried not to show it. He'd expected to have things rolling by now. He wanted her in the studio singing on the fatty record. He wanted the I's dotted and the T's crossed. Done. The mother, in Lamont's opinion, with her mango-dyed feather hair and jowls that drooped like a beset hound, was stunningly unattractive. When she opened the door and he got in a load of her, he struggled to hide his distaste. Pushing out cute little Mimi had obviously been her finest hour. The Haitian father must have been one attractive dude. And then this cat Jerry has shown up. He thought he only had to deal with the mother. He and the witchy had to back it up and roll out there. She's going to be a big star all over again. Lamont restlessly twisted his white gold pinky ring. He decided platinum was played. It wasn't like he had any desire to fly to effing Toledo. He might have just sent Daryl, but after the mess Daryl had already made of this, he couldn't trust him. Neither was Witchy a sure bet. So he decided to hop on a plane this morning and get it done himself. He made Daryl and Witchy come along as punishment. They were cramped in coach, while he and Imani luxuriated in first class. Lamont hadn't yelled at them. In fact, he hadn't said a word to them directly all day. While he often barked, shout, make demands and threats, he wasn't an out-of-control screamer that undercut one's authority. Like they said, thin line between love and hate. He preferred the silent treatment. He found saying nothing spoke volumes. There was nothing worse than being ignored. He brought Imani along for the feminine touch. He didn't want to show up 3 guys barging into this poor woman's house, and damn, she really was poor. Now that he gotten a peek at things, the scene was looking pretty desperate. Mimi was going to turn down a deal to stay here. He probably could have shown up with a C-note and a McDonald's Happy Meal and gotten her to sign. And by God, they better be able to catch the last flight home, or else there was going to be some out-of-control screaming tonight if he got stuck at some airport motel in this third-rate town. Witchy and Daryl were both going to find a $400 John Lobb shoes stuck up their incompetent asses. Mimi sat down between Lamont and Jerry on the sofa. You know, I actually called the office this morning, she said, because I've changed my mind. Lamont shot death rays at Daryl, who stepped behind the kitchen wall so they'd miss him. I thought you would, Lamont said, easily handing her his Mont Blanc pen. I suppose I don't have to read all this today, she said, clearly eager to begin her new life. Just show me. Where do I sign? Girl, please. I'm not signing nothing until I read it. Lamont gingerly held the pages as Mimi signed her name in all 53 places marked with sign here, Post-its. He gave her a hug when she was done. Imani told Mimi she called her first thing tomorrow to discuss plane reservations and arrange any shipping services she might need. Lamont didn't like to shake hands with people, germs, but he gallantly went over and shook Angela's hand, then reluctantly shook Jerry's, bidding them a fond adieu before he stumped out. The others were close behind, practically tripping over each other to get out of the house, though Daryl and Witchy were bracing themselves for the verbal triad to come. With Lamont, you never knew when the storm would hit. Jerry and Angela stood in the doorway, smiling from ear to ear. Lamont turned back and waved one last time before he ducked inside his limo. As soon as the door was closed, Lamont held out his hands to Imani. Having used her superpowers to anticipate her boss's every need, she already had an antibacterial wet nap ready. She slipped off his pinky ring and thoroughly wiped him down. Disc 2, All the King's Women. Chapter 10. Things didn't change. They had her farewell party at Winky's. Mimi and Toya got tipsy off a cheap bottle of champagne. Keisha got sick from eating too much cake. Kenny, furious that she'd gotten a deal without him, showed up ranting and raving and was tossed out into the street by Winky himself. Angela cried the whole time, her tears a mixture of joy and sadness. The next day, Mimi was off to New York. Her first week in the city was already booked solid. Imani had given her an Aramis appointment book as a present and taken the liberty of filling it with appointments. Mimi had lunch with Allison Beth Cohen, the PR dynamo who ran ABC Publicity, the firm that handled the TLE account. She was an impossibly thin, bleach blonde tornado of a woman who walked very fast but took tiny steps. Everyone called her Allie C, like she was a rapper or something. She went shopping at Pottery Barn with Imani for some knickknacks to warm up the company apartment, which turned out to be Lamont's former residence, a spacious one-bedroom co-op on Jane Street in the West Village. Imani said Lamont had been trying to unload it for over 3 years, but since no one was willing to meet his price, it had become a crash pad of sorts for various friends and artists. She met with a vocal coach, a manically cheerful older black woman named Yolanda, who flailed her arms a lot. It had taken her aback at first that the label wanted her to see this woman for 3 sessions a week indefinitely. What was wrong with her voice? After Imani explained that even the most seasoned vocalists worked with coaches to keep their instruments tuned, she felt better. There was an appointment with Dr. Regina Lipsky, a sleek woman who wore kitten heels and a white lab coat and proclaimed herself dermatologist to the stars, which stars is confidential. She remarked without being asked. Then again, unprovoked, she offered, well, Madonna is a former client and Versace's dead, so there's 2. Happy? She gave Mimi a diamond peel with a little machine that buffed her skin and put her on antibiotics. Imani scheduled her for a peel every month for the next 6 months. Coming the following week, she had a dentist appointment. Imani said her teeth were yellowish, but the dentist would fix that. Mimi studied her smile in the bathroom mirror. Her teeth looked white to her. Even Lamont, who exuded my time is money and you can't afford a split second air, invited her out on the town. They went to some boutique opening where there were more bizarrely dressed people on display than there were clothes. Lamont looked like he was going to the Oscars. Mimi, who used a bit of her own advance money to go on a conservative spending spree at Urban Outfitters, looked like she was going to the mall. She should have asked for a signing bonus. After there was a meeting at the office where she had to sing in the conference room in front of 25 members of the staff, she sang Amazing Grace a cappella. She sat down in the back corner afterward, and 10 of the remaining staffers started talking about her like she wasn't in the room. The words marketing, positioning, imaging, and crossover were thrown around. There was no mention of her singing. After about 20 minutes, Imani led her out, but she realized she accidentally left behind the all-important date book. When she went back in a minute to retrieve it, Lamont was saying, should we do something about her nose? Everyone sitting around the table looked up at her as she reflectively touched her nose. No one seemed embarrassed that she had just heard that awful comment. They actually looked like they were checking out her hunker, preparing to give Lamont a full report as soon as she departed. Not to worry, Imani reassured her when Mimi told her what she'd heard. Your nose is lovely. I'm sure the idea will be vetoed. And yesterday, a girl named Lena had called to make a date for lunch. Yo, money told me to holla was her opening gambit. The doorman had just buzzed, announcing Lena's arrival. Now Mimi looked through the peephole of the apartment's front door, waiting for her guest to appear. Lena Whittaker breezed into the elevator. Lamont had told her that this new singer Mimi was really hot. Mimi must be truthfully beautiful for Lamont to describe her that way. He held women up to a rigid standard of beauty and chased all those model bitches. Or maybe he was just trying to hype Mimi up because she was signed to his label. Lena wondered if Lamont had ever described her as really hot. Probably not. At 5'4", all tits and ass, with only a hint of a waist, she shied away from all the lowriders she saw crowding the stores. Nevertheless, Lena Whittaker was not one to sweat an itch no matter how fly, and she was convinced she could hold her own with any looker. After all, she had a lovely face, slanted eyes with the longest eyelashes, a cute snub nose, and cheekbones that could cut glass. And the brothers appreciated her thickness. She was feeling pretty good about her cute, thick self today. Her cinnamon skin was still lightly sun-kissed after an exciting getaway to Miami a week ago. That somehow made her feel sexier. Her girl, Kinko, a half Japanese, half black makeup artist with a ghetto fabulous flair, was working on a photo shoot down there as Lena had jetted down for the weekend just to hang. Kiko was wild as hell, so it was guaranteed fun. Who knew she'd hook up there? Crazy G, he was all she could think about now. She met him at the album release party for Lady Di, the flashiest and most raunchy female rapper in the game. Her 3 big hits off her debut album, Ladylike, were titled My Clit, Ice Me Down, and On Your Knees, Nigga. The party was at Club Rolex, the strip joint where Lady D used to work under the stage name Chanel. There were big booty girls flipping their weaves while they slithered around poles, offering lap dances that were paid for by Lady D's record label. It was the best party Lena had ever been to. Open bar all night, and partying was her forte. Secretly, Lena longed to be outrageous like Lady D, who looked like a black Pamela Anderson, tassel blonde tresses and all, pretty and sexy in an in-your-face way. Lena acted like she was just as confident, but Lady D, who Vibe magazine had dubbed the goddess of bitch power, didn't have to act. Crazy G, an unsigned rapper and a member of Lady D's camp, was fine as hell. Tattoos all over his muscled arms, smooth coffee brown skin, bald head, and the prettiest smile that shone of gold, the kind of thug that made Lena's PUSSY contract involuntarily. He had taken her out to dinner the night after the party to some soul food shack in the Apalaka section of Miami. It was amazing how they were driving along and then all of a sudden the surroundings changed. They went from greenery to ghetto in one block. He explained that the G actually stood for Greg, but professionally it stood for gangsta. But when it comes to the lady, it stands for game, he joked. Lena, who thought it was cool and kind of retro that these Miami cats rock gold teeth instead of platinum, wanted to jump over the table and maul him right then and there. The feeling was mutual. Come on now, girl, he whispered later up in a room at the Delino when her Casabella thong was the only article of clothing still had on. Let a nigga get some dessert. He had a tattoo that spelled out Crazy G in gothic lettering on his washboard stomach, and it was underlined by a long stab wound. He was such a perfect physical specimen that Lena felt a momentary ripple of shame that she wasn't. Didn't brother Crazy G, who enjoyed himself plenty, sucking ferociously on her 3-4D breasts, but if it was PUSSY he wanted, it was P he got. She let him dive in face first, and he made her, oh my God, okay. She let him dive in face first, and he made her come so hard she went into spasms. People always said black men didn't like to go downtown, but Lena had found that to be an urban myth. He took off his boxer shorts and revealed the biggest D she ever seen, personally or in a porno. She had felt it all night rubbing up against her, but once he whipped it out, she was forced to flick on the light. Seeing it from all angles, it was a sight to behold. She wanted to devour it like he done her, but what would Lady D think? He was in D's camp, and tales always travel. Lena had learned that the hard way. And F, what you heard, she wasn't no hoe. Oh, is it 4 a.m? Lena had said to him, I have to get up early for my flight tomorrow. Her flight was actually at 3 in the afternoon, which meant she'd have to get up around 11, but that was early for her. I should go to bed. You already in bed, girl, Crazy G had pointed out anxiously. Come on, just suck me. She kicked him out without blowing him or effing him, but she gotten hers, and that story made Lady D very proud. Oh, he'd been heated, but he paged her 6 times the next day and called her every day since, hadn't he? Lena shuddered to think what Daddy would say if he ever got wind of her dalliance with Crazy G. There would definitely be more hooking up in the future. Lena's father, Marlon Whittaker, was an entertainment lawyer. No, the powerhouse entertainment lawyer. And now he'd gotten into producing movies, one of which had won an Oscar last year. He was on the board of the Fresh Air Fund, always quick to write a check for a charitable cause. Everyone's favorite guy, blah, blah, and blah. Being Marlon Whittaker's daughter made Lena feel like somebody and nobody at the same time. He used to try to set her up with decent, read-boring boys spun of his stuck-up friends. But her father didn't nose too much into her love life anymore, presumably because he was afraid of what he might learn. She only ever really dated one guy, a hip-hop producer named Trevor Banks. Though she'd gotten busy with plenty, her father didn't like the way Trevor's jeans sag in the seat. For Christmas, Daddy had given him a belt. Lena had graduated from Meadow Crest 2 years behind schedule because she'd been kicked out of 4 private schools. For graduation, Daddy had suggested she go on an all-expenses-paid year-long overseas trek with a friend so she could, as he put it, expand your narrow hip-hop obsessed vision of the world. To Marlon, popular music meant jazz and Motown soul. Rap was not music. In his estimation, it was insolent noise that glorified criminality, degraded women, and broadcast a negative image of African Americans to the world. Sensing that the Find Yourself trip was just a way for him to get rid of her for a year, Lena declined. He was always so busy with his work, and packing her off to India or wherever would make his life just swell. Slow your roll, Daddy. Whenever she was in a pinch, she'd invoke the name of her mother, Nancy, who died of ovarian cancer during her freshman year. Marlon had the Nancy Whittaker Research Fund up and running 6 months later, and the annual gala was a hot ticket on the charity circuit. The sympathy bid would work and Marlon would back off some, but the truth was Lena had been buck-ass wild well before her mother's death. She told Daddy she would in fact take him up on the all expenses paid year off, but she'd spend the year in the New York apartment and set her own schedule. What she didn't tell him was that she didn't really have any good friends to invite. Certainly not anyone who wanted to spend an extended period of time traveling in third world countries with her, volatile as she was. After that standoff, Marlon had threatened, "You have 1 year, Marlena. Get it together. I'm cutting the purse strings. I mean it this time." That was 8 months ago, and Lena hadn't gotten it together in the least. She shopped, lunched, partied, got drunk, and slept late, struggling to get herself up and out of the family's Park Avenue Classic 8 to do anything at all. Lena's only real goal in life was to snag a famous boyfriend. Now that she had Crazy G hooked, all she had to do was reel him in. Oh, and one small snag. He needed to become famous. He would. She was sure of it. He was a gifted lyricist, well on his way to stardom. Lena looked at it this way: get to the party early before the VIP gets crowded. She got out of the elevator and made a left. She'd never been to this place when Lamont had lived here. He asked her to show his new artist the ropes in New York, and she was happy to do it. This was just what she needed, a new friend. Someone who didn't know how she regularly got trashed in the papers for getting fall down drunk at some party. Anyway, that was all over. She was turning over a new leaf starting today. She walked to the end of the hall before realizing she should have made a right. She walked back, and as she reached to ring the doorbell of 7C, the door swung open, and there was Mimi smiling. Lamont wasn't just hyping her up, she was hot. Okay, looks like chapter 10 opened the door to some more raunchy. It's very interesting how they just jumped to Lena. And I really wish that Mimi had checked out that contract. That's how so many artists, and not even just the entertainment industry, anytime you sign something and don't read it or have a clear understanding, you setting yourself up for failure. And then when you find out what was written, in that contract, then it's like, I didn't know. That's not gonna help you. But anyway, what's annoying about Lena is I don't know if she's dealing with some long-term grief issues, because you never know how an individual is going to deal with grief. You don't know how long it takes a person to deal with grief. But I just don't like when people squander opportunities, whether you're rich, poor, middle class. I just don't like it. Or is she just one of those people who are spoiled? She has things given to her too easy. She has so many resources and opportunities that are accessible to her. It's like, maybe you need to feel how it feels to not have those opportunities and resources, and a father who is, wants you to succeed. I don't know if he wants to do it from his heart or it's just an image thing. I don't know. But it's irritating, because you have people out there struggling and wish they had like a minute amount of what you have available to you. Yeah, I did a little longer commentary on this chapter because it was just annoying. Lena was annoying, and Mimi, I really wish she had read that contract. I wonder if she's going to discover that she effed up real bad. Okay, let's go to chapter 11. Also, chapter 10 was pretty long. Okay, let's go into 11. By the time they strolled to a little cafe called Tartine on West 4th Street and ordered lunch, Mimi had gleaned a wealth of personal information about Lena Whittaker. She was a recent high school graduate who was taking a year off to explore her options. Oh, she just got out of high school. Okay, I get it. But just because... Okay, let's go on. Mimi wondered what her definition of recent was, since Lisa also said she just turned 21. Really? Just got out of high school, you 20? Okay. You missed my party. It was the ish. Her father worked mostly in Los Angeles, but Lena did not go into what kind of work he did. She lived uptown in her family's apartment with no adult supervision except for her family's longtime housekeeper. Her older sister, Alexandra, got on her nerves. She's getting her MBA from the Wharton School of Business. Lottie effing da. She had a boyfriend, a rapper named Crazy Jean, who she had met in Miami. She was a hip-hop fanatic. Itch. You gonna eat all that? Lena shrieked when waitress put a gargantuan grilled chicken and portobello mushroom sandwich with a mountainous side of fries in front of Mimi. A woman sitting alone at a nearby table in the tiny bistro glanced over, obviously wondering why this pretty young girl was being called out as an itch. Mimi winced slightly, but Lena just scooped up a handful of fries and prattled on. People didn't talk that way in Toledo, at least not the people Mimi knew, but she noticed a lot of people here did. When Imani had run into a friend as they were leaving Republic, a noodle shop on Union Square, the friend asked if she had found a man yet. She replied, "Itch, please." Allie C had ended a cell phone conversation with a female rapper she represented by saying, "Itch, don't get me started." Lamont and his male croonies had a longer list of terms from which to choose when addressing one another. mother effer, money, pimp, playboy, player. Mostly they just fell back on the timeless nigga. Now, you see that? You see how we call each other negative words and we cool with it and it's supposed to be endearing? Yeah, I don't want that kind of endearing. Let's go on. It made me realize that when Lena said itch, she was using it as a synonym for girlfriend. It was all about context, but she wasn't yet used to being on the receiving end of such language, hence her involuntary winch. So how do you know Lamont exactly? Mimi asked. Lena was almost young enough to be his daughter. Were they close friends? I've been knowing Lamont, Lena answered with a self-satisfied smile. Truth was, Lamont had taken a 17-year-old party-hopping Lena into his crew as a mascot of sorts because he was hoping to get close to Marlon Whittaker, one of the most respected men in the entertainment industry. She'd managed to maintain her position by keeping Lamont entertained with her wild antics. I get invited to all the parties. Lena shoveled a fork load of goat cheese salad into her mouth. Only A-list, I know everybody. You know who I think is super fine, Mimi said, hoping Lena knew this person? That model Omar LaRue. He was in those Tommy Hilfiger ads, you know? Lena put up a go no further hand and exposed a mouthful of half-eaten salad as she said, I don't just know him, I had him. Had him? I was effing around with him for a hot minute. No, Mimi choked. Lena nodded, stabbing at her salad. Yes, I think he's so hot. So did I, Lena said blandly. What happened? He kept trying to do me raw. Mimi looked puzzled and Lena thought, this girl needs to get a translation book if she's going to be rolling with the TL squad. Raw? Without a condom? She elucidated. And then I find out he gave his ex herpes. No, Mimi gasped. Lena said with a disgusted curl of the lip. So I asked him about it. And this nigga has the nerve to come out with, I haven't had an outbreak in 2 months. You believe that? Unbelievable, Mimi snorted. So I told him, look, player, I don't care if the shit is active or inactive. This is information I need to know. She sucked her teeth. Nigga ain't ish. I'm so glad I never let him touch me without a rubber. So that was it, Mimi asked, wondering just how many people Lena had. Yeah, I kicked his ass to the curb with a quickness. He had a little ick anyway. He had a little D anyway. A little disease D, Mimi added, gleefully taking part in the man bashing. Who would have thought Omar LaRue could look that good and be that nasty? Kind of like Jamal. Men were just pigs. I saw him on a huge billboard yesterday on Houston Street, Mimi said, pronouncing the street's name as one should the city. Where? Houston Street. Houston? Lena corrected. Houston Street. I saw it. She leaned towards Mimi and cracked. Oh, I know for a fact those briefs are stuffed. I know exactly what you mean, Mimi concurred. Finally figuring out the standard English translation of Namin, the waitress came over for dessert orders and Lena automatically said, nothing for me. Mimi pointed out a tasty looking apple tart in a bakery style display case and then without prodding, Lena said, well, okay, one for me too. I really like your hair, Mimi said, admiring Lena's short Halle Berry style pixie. Lena touched it unsurely. Really? I just had it cut. For the first week, I kept thinking it was up in a ponytail. Then I would put my hand up there and realize I'm damn near bald. She dove into the tart as soon as the waitress put it down. It looks really good on you, Mimi reassured her. Thanks. And speaking of hair, we have to do something about chores. Lena pulled a Palm Pilot out of her Lewis bag. I spoke to Rod at James Spot. Who? Mimi interjected, slightly disoriented by all the unfamiliar names coming at her. Rod, James, Scott, who? Lena looked up. My hairstylist, Rod Horton, at the James Scott salon. He usually doesn't have immediate openings, she said, but I told him you were a close friend. Lena smiled. at her own pool. Mimi was getting more confused. This was the first time they met. Lena hadn't even known what her hair looked like until today. Lamont told me to handle the hair situation, Lena said, in response to Mimi's befuddled look. She was thrilled when Lamont told her to befriend Mimi, get acquainted with her, the hip-hop scene, and do something about her hair. Now Lena actually had things to put on her to-do list. Oh, Mimi murmured. Lamont hadn't said anything to her about her hair situation. He said your hair was too, Lena made quotation marks, in the air, neo soul. She paused and gleefully added, I see what he means, boo. She tilted her head to get a look at Mimi's bushy ponytail. Can you even run a comb through that ish? Only when it's wet with a lot of conditioner. Yeah, you need a relaxer or at least a good flat iron, Lena said. Rod will decide. He'll be back from Disney World in a few days. He went to Disney World with his kids. He has a few boys, Lena cracked, but they ain't kids. He went down for a gay day. Gay day? Yeah, Lena said. You know how they like to party. Right, Mimi said vaguely. Getting her hair relaxed sounded good. She never wore her hair loose because she looked like Shaka Khan. Are you going to come with me? Sure will, Lena put away her palm. What day are you going shopping with Vanessa? Shopping? Mimi said, lost again. Who's Vanessa? Boo-boo, Lena screamed as if all this information were front page news known by everyone. Lamont's sister-in-law. She's taking you shopping. She is? No one from the label scheduled with you? No. Well, Vanessa could go all day. I can't keep up with her. So I might sit that one out. Are you friends with Daryl? Wouldn't say friends, Lena answered sourly. I don't think he likes me, Mimi said, hoping Lena could tell her what his deal was. Don't take it personally, Lena said breezily, having an internal debate about whether she should order another tart. She joined the Crunch Gym 3 blocks from her apartment because she wanted to firm up, but in 2 years she'd never been able to motivate and get over there. Does he call you Shorty? I don't remember. He will, Lena said. A lot of guys say that. What up, Shorty? You know? Whatever. If anything, it's a compliment, like, what up, cutie, or something. But pay attention to the next time Daryl says that to you. He says it with such venom, like it's a put down or something. I guess because everyone has been saying that to him all his life. He has a severe short man complex. But I try so hard to be nice to him. He's going to be producing my album. How should I deal with him? Lena had already decided she and Mimi were going to be best friends. But with this question, Mimi scored many bonus points. Mimi was the new hot girl on TOE, the girl that Lamont was banking on, and Miss Dang was deferring to her. As Mimi stared at her wide-eyed, Lena gave the question considerable thought. She felt like the all-knowing Wizard of Oz to Mimi's guileless Dorothy. In the distance, she heard a dog barking. Toto? There's no doubt in my mind that he hates you, Lena said bluntly, which made Mimi's hopeful expression sag. Lena put her hands across the table and softened the blow with, because you're very pretty. That timid compliment was all she was getting. Lamont is high on you. And most upsetting for a little country D, you can look down on him, literally. Mimi nodded at Lena's sag assessment. Don't feel bad, Lena said. He doesn't like me, Vanessa, Imani, or any of the women in the inner sanctum. The inner sanctum? Lamont's people, Lena said impatiently. Did this girl need to have everything broken down to the letter? With a hushed reverence, Mimi asked, are all the women in the inner sanctum beautiful? You have to be, Lena said smugly, proud to be a member, and pissed that she was probably considered the least beautiful of the bunch. But getting back to the problem on the table, she announced dramatically, Daryl is probably in his filthy little Brooklyn studio apartment putting a hex on you right now. What am I going to do? Mimi cried as though Lena were a tarot reader who just turned over the death card. Lena pressed the tips of her fingernails together. Her nails were painted white with chipping multicolored palm trees, a remnant of her Miami trip. He is a hot producer, Lena very reluctantly admitted. He is? Yeah, that song he did for Dickie is retarded. Mimi took it from the smile on Lena's face that retarded meant good. And on the low, he writes most of Dickie's material. Lena said, snapping for the waitress to bring her a second tart. There is your bright side. He'll probably give you some great songs. Just kill him with kindness, Lena said, deciding that was the way to go. I suspect that all that boy needs is a little love. The waitress came over with bill in hand, so Lena bailed on tart number 2, which she knew was dead wrong even to think about. Mimi immediately grabbed the bill, saying my treat. Lena hadn't even reached for her wallet. Thanks, Lena said, scratching at the palm tree on her nail. I'll get you next time. Things get kind of tight for me toward the end of the month. I mean, no, not really, Mimi said, putting down $3.20. She barely had enough cash. That was a lot for 2 sandwiches and some tiny pastries. My money doesn't come until the first, Lena explained soberly. She was referring to her monthly allowance, which was deposited directly into her checking account. But judging by her dour expression, you'd think she was waiting for food stamps and a welfare check to feed her starving children. I thought you said you didn't work, Mimi said, assuming that by money she meant a paycheck, and also noting that it wasn't the end of the month. It was the 12th. I don't, Lena said curtly, because the fact that she didn't have any professional goals and didn't aspire to go on to higher education was a sore spot for her. Time to change the subject. Want to come over and hang out tonight? She untied the waist of her burgundy FBU sweats and exhaled. Sure, Mimi answered. Great, Lena said, throwing on her fur-lined denim jacket over her matching FUBU hooded sweatshirt. Spend the night if you want. I ain't got ish to do. Okay, Mimi said brightly as they walked out. Let me go over to my place first to get some stuff. Lena immediately put her arm up for an approaching cab. Lena, Mimi protested. My apartment is only 3 blocks away. I thought we were going there first. My apartment. Mimi couldn't believe she had a place in New York and a record deal. Every night she'd go to sleep hoping she wouldn't wake up to find it was all a dream. I know, but it's cold, Lena complained. And I'm full. I can't walk. Mimi couldn't help chuckling and scooted into the cab behind her. As they waited at a red light, Lena turned to her. So, you never told me. You got a man back in Toledo? Mimi rolled her eyes. Itch, please. They laughed. My, how we learn quickly, right? Okay, that was the end of 11. So I guess one more. Let's do 12. Okay, but before we go into 12, yeah, that just, it just shed light on the vernacular of those called Black Americans. It's like, you think about it, when we are saying things to people we're considering is endearing, it's very negative, demeaning. I stopped doing the itch thing or calling my so-called female friends bitches when I was 15. And the reason why I stopped doing that is because one day I was out talking like, we talk, and calling my female friends and acquaintances, and I think some relatives was around, bitches. And this older man, thank God for him, God bless his soul, he was like, is that your friend? I was like, yeah. I'm looking at him like, don't it seem like we're friends, And he was like, well, if that's your friend, why would you call her that? And then after that, it's just like a light switch was turned on, and I just stopped. So I just, if I call you a itch, it's not because I'm being endearing, trust me. But other than that was pretty cool. It was quick and cool. So I'm gonna hit one more chapter. So let's go into chapter 12. Queen B is chapter 12. Vanessa de la Cruz was gazing into the mirror in her expertly lit bathroom, doing what she did best, admiring her own beauty. She brushed a glob of thick Bobbi Brown lip gloss on her collagen enhanced lips, blotted, shook out her tumble of 20 locks, and admired herself again, beautiful, gorgeous, beyond, almost ready to go to heaven. She hadn't used any L'Oreal tonight, though the products cluttered in her bathroom. A perk of her lucrative contract with the cosmetic company. When they had approached her, she was delighted when it came to light that they wanted her to hawk anti-wrinkle cream. She wanted to tell them to F off. She didn't have any wrinkles. Well, they were only beginning to sprout. Since she was supposed to look her age in the ads, did that mean they weren't going to airbrush? She was 31 and annoyed that she couldn't downgrade to 28 because her adult life was a matter of public record and some nosy reporter would surely call her on it. Oh, to be young again. In her business, she felt like an archaeological find. Vanessa had appeared on the cover of every fashion magazine, all continents, by the time she was 20. At the peak of her fame, she had predictably dated a grungy 20-something actor and even more predictably been dumped by him a year later without explanation. A string of brief and tumultuous failed romances have followed, along with the obligatory rehab stay at promises that didn't take. By 26, she had fallen out of favor with the fickle fashion flock and, like most models, had no contingency plan whatsoever. Having drunk from the well of fame and privilege, it was difficult to fade away into anonymity. So she took the L'Oreal job. She had to keep her face out there, but she had her agent negotiate for added compensation for having her face associated with the anti-aging product. On edge of the sunken bathtub sat Vanessa's best friend, Mustafa, a slightly effeminate, painfully thin, naive native of Senegal who claimed to be a performance artist. Though curiously, no one, not even Vanessa, had ever seen him perform anything anywhere, and he had no identifiable source of income. Baby, is that the baby? Mustafa inquired lazily, flipping through W. Lupe's got it, she said, unconcerned, referring to one of her illegal immigrant nanny trio. Consuelo was weekdays, Lupe was weeknights, and Jomandi was weekends, holidays, and travel days. If Vanessa's husband Alonzo were here, he'd go running. He had extra sensitive ears when it came to the little one. He could hear that kid fart from 3 rooms away. It was bizarre. Yet when Vanessa would ask him to upgrade her wedding ring, he played deaf and dumb. Alonzo was the vice president of hookups at Triple Large Entertainment. That is what it actually said on his business card. Translation: he was the hapless brother of CEO Lamont Jackson. His responsibilities doing whatever Lamont said. His annual salary, very high 6 figures. Vanessa thought he was a failure. Alonzo wouldn't be accompanying them to heaven tonight. He was out of town on some sort of business, whatever. Marriage didn't really suit Vanessa de la Cruz. By their 4th date, she discovered she was pregnant. They had done the deed on their first, even though Vanessa usually waited until she received an appropriately expensive gift before she invited a man to the paradise that was her PUSSY. But Alonzo, though not as high profile or rich as the man she'd been dating for a decade, was too sexy to be denied. Tall and ripped. He had short, wavy brown hair, warm chestnut skin, a movie star profile, and a husky voice that made every stupid thing that came out of his luscious lips sound arousing. They ran off to Vegas and were married in a $75 ceremony at the Silver Bell Chapel of Love without telling anyone. except the press. It was so exciting. Vanessa decided to have the baby because, well, all the models were doing it. And she was on the cusp of 30. Motherhood will be her next act. She'd appeared on the cover of Fit Pregnancy, in a Gap maternity ad, and nude in her 7th month in the L layout. The accompanying profile, only one page, when Vanessa felt she deserved 2 at least, quoted her mussing about the rigors of pregnancy. I've gained 9.5 pounds, but the sacrifice is so worth it. The joy of impending motherhood. It's a girl, and I can't wait to have another little me running around. And why she planned on naming the baby Vanessa. Why should men be able to do that and not women? Carolina Herrera was a junior. I want one too. Turned out Amino's assistance was wrong. It was a boy. Motherhood was the one thing that suited her less than marriage. Pedro Miguel Antonio de la Cruz Jackson was a cranky baby, and Vanessa was used to sleeping in. The round-the-clock nanny rotation took care of that problem. But Pedro, who had olive skin, big hazel eyes, and a shiny mop of sandy brown curls, just like mommy, always smiled for the cameras. And wasn't that what counted? Mustafa followed Vanessa as she trapezed into her dressing room, which was designed to look like a chic boutique. She let her long satin robe fall and stood a neutral, eyeing the racks of clothes and cubicles of neatly arranged accessories. Every public outing was an opportunity to preen another fashion suit. Ashamed of her body, there was no reason. Vanessa was swelted and long-limbed, with curves in all the right places. She had enough reinforcement from photographers, bookers, and every man she ever dated to know that there were no words to adequately describe her physical perfection. Even after the baby, no lipo needed, sweetie. Vanessa's first order of business after returning from her honeymoon in Cape Toluca, an exclusive resort in Anguilla, had been to hire a contractor to turn their workout space in Alonzo's former bachelor pad, big and paid for by Lamont, into a closet for her constantly expanding wardrobe. Once married, Alonzo had expected Vanessa to cook and handle other such domestic duties like his mama had done when he was growing up. But when Alonzo had returned home one evening shortly after their lovey-dovey honeymoon, he learned that Vanessa de la Cruz didn't serve. She expected to be served. "I'm hungry," he said. "So am I," she responded, not looking up from her copy of Hola magazine. "What's for dinner?" He made the mistake of pressing. "I don't know," she said, peering at him over the top of the magazine with a look of utter confusion. "What?" When he suggested she cook something, she screamed like a banshee, "I'm pregnant!" What did they have in common, really? Alonzo thought. Their son was a blessing from God. Vanessa looked upon motherhood as a noose slowly tightening around her exquisite neck. Alonzo was a reformed bad boy who had grown out of his hard partying ways. Vanessa continued to live the life of a rich, unencumbered, socially connected 21-year-old. Alonzo kept imploring her to quit abusing that ish for everyone's sake, but that ish was the only thing that kept her from confronting the grim reality that she was someone's wife and someone's mother, and therefore expected to act as such. They did have one thing in common: a love of rough sex. That and the fact that they looked so damn good together was enough to keep the marriage intact for the time being. Dressed in skin-tight white Frankie B jeans, sans panties, stiletto boots, and a fur chubby over a sheer white camisole, Vanessa struck a pose and waited for Mustafa's usual assessment. "Perfect, baby," he cooed. She snorted a line of coke. Mustafa followed suit. Then they both donned their shades and were off without a word of farewell to Lupe or Pedro. And that was chapter 12. How shallow. How shallow. But that's life. Well, you know what? I know everyone in Hollywood isn't shallow like that. But just, her child is just another accessory. And I'm sure it was a way to bank on her financial, future. I mean, because that's how she's coming off. Like, well, I might as well just have a baby, and that way I'll be taken care of for like at least 18 years. Oh, that's so terrible. Okay, folks, that is the end of this second installment. As soon as possible, I'll upload the next installment. So show me how much you guys like this and appreciate it. I appreciate that you appreciate it. Share it, tell a friend, like, subscribe, and comment, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.